Yeah. So, hi everyone. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming Sunitha Godasi, madam, a seasoned business excellence and transformation leader with over 21 years of experience in driving large-scale organization changes. Sunitha currently serves as a business excellence and transformation leader at Alstom. She has just left from there, and has some other ambition to go, where she helps organizations streamline operations, adopt digital solution, and build high-performance culture. She's also a IICA Certified Independent Director and a passionate digital transformation consultant, a powerful speaker and thought leadership under her. Sunita has inspired many through her talks on leadership, personal growth, and professional excellence. Today, we shall join us to share her valuable insight on how startup can apply corporate excellence principle to build resilient, scalable, and successful business in India. Dynamic startup ecosystem. Welcome to the Madam Sunita, Madam. Um, Initial thoughts from your side.
Thank you, Sitaramji, for giving the quick round of introduction and being me on this podcast. Um, I'm very happy to be sharing my experience towards how we can actually incorporate the business excellence framework or the principles into the startup ecosystem.
Okay. So let's start from this discussion. So possibly I'll start with a small, easy question for you from your side, which is you're there in the startup ecosystem for a long time, so it must be very easy. What excites you the most about Indian startup ecosystem right now, especially in you are from Hyderabad, so how you feel about that?
I strongly believe that this startup ecosystem has the potential to transform India from a job creator to the job seekers.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that one, possibly for our viewers?
Yeah, so this helps. So we know like how the Indian ecosystem is evolving today, right? So as we all know, India is a vibrant ecosystem right now. You see a lot of startups are not just launching, but the way they are growing and they are trying to create the jobs in different segments and different fields are really helping the Indian economy to the fresh graduates who are actually coming out. So you see that there is a big evolution or a trend or trend change in the way the job market is focused today, right? So we see a larger opportunities coming from these startups in different
Mhm.
domains and towards different segments, especially when you look at the AI as an era where we are focusing. So we see different jobs in different segments to different um, with different technologies are evolving, and then we see a huge scale of job market the way it is scaling up today.
Okay. I can understand that. So, from that question, I wanted to go to the next one. So, what is the biggest gaps or challenges you see for startup which are coming up in 2026 in terms of fund requirement, talent retention, regulatory hurdles, or go-to-market strategy?
Okay. So, like in the earlier part, we have seen how India is a vibrant startup ecosystem, right? But on the other side, if we see on the other side of it, especially as per the NASCOM report, we see that 9 out of 10 startups really failed in their first 1 year to 5 years of their journey.
Hmm.
Yes, these numbers are very scary, I would say. And this is not just due to the inadequate funding issues, but majorly due to the basic missing of basic fundamental aspects of the startup ecosystem, I would say. Like it can be uncertainty in the product or uncertainty in the market fit, or it can be poor customer validation, or it can be in terms of scaling up very early, before the system has been set it up. So these are some of the major foundational challenges we normally notice as a gaps while we are setting up the business as a startup to the growing as a scale up entity.
Yeah, I think that's the reason the market is a bit scared to invest on the early on startups until they make some kind of a revenue model. That's what we see as a trend. But yeah, I think we have to do something about that in terms of policy where we can help the startup in the early stage, right? Through the mentorship or some kind of a profiling system where they can grow on the particular area, validate their MVP product line, and then also the go-to strategy market. So I truly get across where you're coming from. So especially the NASSCOM report also tells the same thing. But yeah, I think there are a lot of things are happening to get across and overcome that. So, what I understand from your journey, what I've seen through what you have shared in your LinkedIn and things like that, as a business excellence and transformation leader, so what key framework, like you have been part of Lean, Six Sigma, and Kaizen implementation on your early stage. So, what these transformation framework can be used on the early stage startup adopt without big budgets over there?
Okay, that's a good point. So, drawing from my 2 decades of business excellence or the corporate excellence experience, what I gained, I believe that startups can thrive by embedding these principles or these business excellence frameworks at a very early phase of the startup, I would say, where they are not just built through the visionary leadership, but through setting up the basic foundational aspects of the startup. So I would like to explain in 2 aspects. So one, as a lean startup, the way we can actually use in the very initial phase of the
Yeah.
startup to set it up, and the second, I would also like to elaborate in terms of the framework called achieving competitive excellence. This can be more helpful during the growing or the scaling up phase of an organization. So coming back to the first concept, the way I want to talk it up, when we talk in terms of the lean startup, it's basically hope everyone are aware of the term called lean, right? It's a business excellence framework, or it's a continuous improvement methodology. It's a very strong management philosophy which actually helps in terms of doing less and then achieving more, or how we can actually maximize the customer benefit by reducing not adding value activities. So the way we can apply in the startup is like, it just focuses on what is that core essential aspects which are required for the startup to begin with. So it always starts with, start small and see how we can fail fast and how we can learn faster so that we can pivot it very smartly. So this is the concept around it has been built around, where it says like, how we can build a minimum viable product at a very early phase in a very, very small way, and then see how it can be inbuilt into the customer loop in terms of continuously monitoring or getting the continuous feedback from the customer so that we can learn by enabling this continuous loop. So that it is important in the very initial phase of an organization to get the real-time experience or real-time feedback from the customer on the product to the way we are trying to evolve the startup. And this helps in terms of understanding the way we are pivoting to the way we can set it up the business in the long run.
Okay. Coming back from your earlier question, what the answer you have given. So, what advice will you give founder struggling with scaling from 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, like in team building, culture, digital tool, that areas?
Okay. So yeah, so rightly said, these are some of the challenges where startups often fail, because normally when we start a business, it's like a very small team, right? Right? It can be, the team size of 5 or team size of 10, where we have to manage the complete skill set which are required to handle a business, right? So at times we see founder wearing different hats it can be like most of the hats are being has been worn by the founder itself, and it will be overwhelming most of the time. So what I'm trying to say is like we have already discussed on the way we have to set it up the business with the lean principles, and now we would also see like how we can grow or scale the business. And while we are in this process, how important is it to set up the system? So today I'm more talking about the setting up of the system, the basic system or a foundation, which is very essential to scale up the business in a very systematic and a structured way. And to explain it further, I would like to use the principle called achieving competitive excellence. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a framework which actually builds or enables the organization to to build the competency of excelling like excellence to compete with the customers. So this has been enabled through a very simple framework in terms of setting up this system, focusing on three important dimensions for an organization. And these three important dimensions of an organization are very common for any type of organization, or in fact, to any kind of domain or any kind of segment of an organization. So the first very important dimension of an system in an organization is processes. Or when I say processes, it starts right from defining the mission of an organization to the shared vision of an organization, which will give a clarity or more clarity to the people across the organization, to the system across the organization in terms of what are those key policies it talks about, or procedures or frameworks, or it can be any strategic element which is required for an organization to pivot or direct. And while we are talking about talking about building a very basic foundation of a system, the second important component of this dimension is the people. So we all know people play a very important role in an organization. In fact, they are the biggest assets of an organization. They play a very pivotal role in terms of bringing collaboration between these three dimensions to have the effective system in place. In fact, I would like to highlight or give an example on one of the important aspect which is
Mm-hmm.
very essential in terms of building up this dimension is culture. Culture play a very important role. So there is a famous quote which talks about culture is strategy at
Mm-hmm.
breakfast, right? So it plays so important role in terms of enabling this culture at the right place in the right moment. So this can be set it up in a very simple way in terms of motivating them, or in terms of building right level of rituals, or say for example the organization where there are multiple cross-functional teams. So
Mm.
it's very important to enable the collaboration between these cross-functional teams so that they are not just transparently sharing the information, but they have this trust and bonding in terms of collaborating at the right time to get the right information and then build the product at the right time or with the right quality, right? So what we see as a good practices over this segment is like, we have seen a daily rituals to the systematic way of hosting the very important rituals of motivating. For example, I've seen some of the best practices as setting up or hosting a monthly meetings of Monday motivation, for example,
Mm-hmm.
where every week we identify, recognize a small wins in terms of motivating the team. And while we are talking about the wins here, so we also focus on setting up the innovation culture. So I always believe that innovation and failure are the two coins of, or the two faces of a coin, which goes in hand. So we used to set up a Friday failure day, for example,
Mm-hmm.
where team is completely focused in terms of identifying the challenges, or they used to do a retrospection in terms of
Okay.
analyzing what did not go well, or like what can be done better, and then we used to evolve on top of it. And then there used to be a time where we used to have no meetings on one day, where we can actually set it up a dedicated
Yeah.
forum in terms of completely focusing on the MAPs or building up, the improvements. So this used to help us, the team, in terms of bringing up that collaboration. So what we normally say is like, people, when it comes to the people part, so it plays a very important role in terms of leadership as well, where they are not just setting up this frameworks or setting up this vision and all, but they're also focusing not just on coaching, but they are the people who should actually set up these behaviors in terms of setting up these um, safety environment where they can actually feel safe in terms of talking about the failures. So these aspects will actually build the trust within the people or the employees, and then that's how the system of trust has been enabled or inculcated to bring that effective collaboration in place. And the third important dimension, what I would talk, is the technology or the tools, which are the key enablers of an
Hmm.
organization. And in the current era, if you see, we are in the era of digital era, right? So where we see a lot of technologies inbuilt, and then we are seeing the way the digital initiatives are helping. So everywhere in an organization, if you see, it's completely data-driven management or data-driven frameworks are being enabled. And in fact, we are seeing a lot of evolution in the way the digital frameworks has been come up. So everywhere, if you see the way the SaaS platforms are enabled, or in terms of the
Hmm.
AI, agentic AI platforms, the way it is automating the complete workflow is completely transforming the way the business is executed, or the way the business is evolving today has been changed. So the
Yes.
technology and tools are becoming a very great enabler for an organization to completely bring a breakthrough initiatives. So in fact, overall, I would say, to gel all these three dimensions, the people collaboration is very important with the aligned technology aspects
Yeah.
to bring the breakthrough initiatives or bring the innovation culture in the organization.
Yeah, I think it's all about the people, right? So I think you rightly said Monday, as we everybody know that Mondays are when we come back, we have a pile of mails. We look into mails for the first half. Second half, we we reply to the mails, and third, maybe on Tuesday we start working. So possibly, yeah, you rightly said that no meetings on Monday is going to be a good takeaway from the whole discussion. We leave the technology part, leave the culture part separately, but I think bringing some kind of some small things like this brings a lot of one thing, the motivation, and then also a culture of transformation internally first, right? And then that's is adopted into the product and long-term goals of a company. Great. So, what I see is nothing but you have been in the industry for now for 21 years. Doesn't look like, but yeah, now it's 21 years. You have also coming out of your corporate role and now working towards your startup mentorship role or independent director role, right? Uh, so that's what you're looking into now. So, how can established professional better support the ecosystem like you? In terms of any of the new startup, or when you're talking about the independent director role, so how you can help them to grow on this ecosystem?
That's a great point. So, as a professional or a consultant having 2 decades of experience, so since we have seen a lot of industries, and then we have experienced the lot of workflows or a lot of challenges what we have seen in different organization in different way. So we carry those experiences, and then we carry those best practices in fact, in terms of how we have seen an industry has grown to how the industry has been been in a challenging phase, where the way we have been fixing those issues, or how proactively we have enhanced those improvements and all. We can really carry forward those experiences into the smaller ecosystem, where they are just starting up with the very small set of skill set, which are
Hmm.
which will be very difficult for them to, wear different hats and then manage together. So what I'm trying to say is like, as an individual business excellence consultant, we bring this experience along with us and
Hmm.
then into the different segments, and then we can really help them in that pivotal point to guide them as in best practices what we can do. And in fact, the interesting fact is like when we there is a quote saying that the person who has built cannot fix it. At times, what happens is like when we build and when we eventually start building the system right from the beginning. So when we stuck in somewhere, right, it will be very difficult for us to understand what is the issue or what is a challenge. And we as a third person, when we look into the
Hmm.
scenario, we can guide them in a different way in terms of helping them understand what exactly is the challenge or how differently we can fix the problem.
Great. Yeah, I think that's true. The person who is building, he cannot fix it is the right quote. I think there were the consultant who have experience both in terms of compliance, because for startup ecosystem, the initial compliance is much more easy because initially they are mostly into the hurdle mode, right? If they don't control their finances and their compliances on time, when they grow up, it's very hard to fix. And I think you rightly said, consultant who are in business excellence are key to keeping all this loose and tied up. um, Rightly said. So I'll go to the next side.
Yes, it's very
Side.
difficult. It's
Mhm.
very difficult during the growth phase to
Yeah.
control these chaos what we normally have inbuilt over the time, right? So very difficult at that time.
So in terms of future outlook and actionable advice, what are the emerging tech trends you see? AI, sustainability, deep tech. We hear everything, drone tech, and other things over there. So what emerging trend should startup in India should focus on for next 3 to 5 years?
Okay, so it's a very good point. The way the ecosystem is evolving, it's huge. In fact, in terms of the deep technologies, the way it is coming and the way it is disrupting the market is huge, I would say. So one thing what I want to say is like the AI first startup is the one thing what everyone are looking up. And not just AI. When I say AI, it's all about the deep technology or agentic AI platforms. So I've seen a lot of startups, the way they are disrupting already the Indian market or the overall startup ecosystem. So I would say the future trends is more in terms of how the agentic AI platforms are going to disrupt or how the AI platforms are going to evolve in terms of enhancing the more sustainable platforms, focusing on ESG.
Yep. Um, we are closing to towards the end of the segment. Or so one piece of advice for young founders and one for ecosystem enablers like investor, incubator, policymaker you want to give, because I have seen you in the both the side of the story. You're supporting or mentoring the startup ecosystem leaders, as well as you are also into the ecosystem enabler part of that, right? Where you are also an investor in some way. So, what advice you'll give it to young founders and one for the ecosystem enablers?
So one small advice is like, always look in terms of the start small and see how we can build on top of it. Like we discussed on the lean startup methodology, right? So it's always very important to see the market fit at the very initial phase of it. So always I would say start small. So don't hesitate to fail fast and then learn faster and then pivot it very fast before it is going to the very later phase of it. That's one small message. And the second thing, second thing is like take AI as an advantage or take AI as in is not just an enabler, but it's a core component in any of the business stream when we set it up. So, because if you see the way the AI is evolving or the deep technology is evolving, it's drastically or dramatically impacting the overall platform, and also considering the ESG factors or sustainable factors
Yeah.
will actually help the larger ecosystem as well. So, these are the three things I would like to give as a small message.
Great. I think we are at the end of our fag, and I wanted to end this one with a rapid fire round. Possibly, we can ask some quick questions and then we can wrap this session. So, I wanted to just keep three or four questions for you, a quick ones, which will give some great advice to the listeners also. So, one book every startup founder must read, and why?
The lean startup, like the way explained, it gives a very simple message in a
Okay.
very with a very simple framework.
Okay. One habit that separate good founders from great ones.
I would talk about the discipline. I know we have talked about a lot of on discipline and the culture. So I would say discipline is one important habit, not just in this startup ecosystem, but anywhere, even in our day-to-day life.
Okay. As a business excellence, we have talked about that. Favorite tool or framework for business excellence?
Okay, we talked about lean startup, but along with this, I would also like the achieving competitive excellence framework as a framework, where I've seen a lot of best practices and the way it has really helped the different types of organization is amazing.
Okay. Business lesson you have learned from your corporate transformation journey.
One of the biggest lesson, yeah, what I talked is on the culture part. So culture plays a very important role in terms of collaborating all the important dimensions of an organization.
Uh, Last question from our side. One piece of advice for young women aspiring to be in the startup ecosystem.
Okay, again, the same thing, start small. And then what I believe is like, like if I want to quote a simple example, when we talk in terms of gaining a confidence, right? It just start with taking small action. It will not just come by its own thing. Likewise, I would say, start with small. So when you start small, you understand the core aspects of the idea, and then you start getting those feedbacks so that you understand in detail and then pivot the overall business framework into the way it can be evolved. So don't wait till the big product to be developed and see how it can be launched. So start with small component which can be developed as a small viable product and see how it works overall with the customer.
Great. I think it has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Sunitha Godasi, madam, for generously sharing your 21 year of experience, hard-earned experience, transformation expertise, and personal journey with us. Your energy clearly shows the deep belief in India's startup potential. We're truly contagious, right? So, for all our listeners, whether you are first-time founders, a scaling entrepreneur, or someone who are willing to contribute to the ecosystem, I hope you walk away from the episode feeling empowered to build with excellence, resilience, and purpose. If you enjoyed this conversation, I must say you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share the episode with a founder or aspiring leaders who need to hear it. Sunita, madam, before we sign off, any final word of your from your side to our audience?
Thank you so much for being me on here. And then I really love the perspectives and the way we discussed on how we can really see the business excellence can be applied onto the startup ecosystem. So I really see a greater opportunity in this space today, looking at the way the vibrant India ecosystem is evolving to the way the digital platforms are evolving, the way the deep technology is emerging. It's
Hmm.
really need of the hour, I would say.
Yeah, from this conversation, I think I'll take up one point for sure is one how to handle our Monday mornings. Thank you again. Thanks everyone for joining this call,
Thank you.
and we'll see you again. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.